Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the GTM.news podcast. I have Declan Mulkeen here today. Thanks for being here, Declan.
Thanks, Taylor, for having me on the show.
Really appreciate it. Give some context for the listeners. I've been connected with Declan for a little while now. I've seen him in different community groups around the area, and he's a CMO at Strategic ABM. And I wanted to bring him on to kind of take a deep dive into ABM. What does it mean in 2023? It's been something that has been popularized in the past couple of years, and especially in this world of marketing efficiency, growth efficiency, GTM efficiency. Where does ABM play in that? So let's jump right in, Declan. Just overall, let's in the world of B2B growth and go to market, definitions are something that are thrown around, or abbreviations and acronyms are thrown around a lot. So if you don't mind, from your perspective, how do you define ABM for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you're right, Taylor, also to say that it's become probably a bit longer, actually, probably the last 4 or 5 years has become very kind of popular and hot, and the kind of latest, the new kid on the block, so to speak. And but I'll tell you a story in a little bit about how long it's been around for, because it's been around for a lot longer.
Okay.
But I mean, account-based marketing, obviously, if you think about the acronym ABM, obviously account-based marketing. If you ignore the marketing for a second, just think about account. So what ABM is, in a sense, is a way of looking at a subset of your market. If you think about, you have what you call your total addressable market, your TAM, which is anybody and everybody who could potentially buy your product or solution. And obviously, then that normally for most companies is just way too big. And you couldn't, your stomach, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. So you can't afford to target that many accounts. So then you say, well, how do I look at the accounts which are of more interest to me? So account-based marketing is a way of kind of putting a lens on your total addressable market and looking at those accounts that you, through data, through research, you believe are the most valuable accounts to your business. And that's a mixture of existing customers as well as potential new customers, prospects that could become a good fit for your company. So the way I like to see account-based marketing, or what I kind of call an account-based strategy, is to think about it as a lens, looking at the market and thinking, okay, these companies, existing customers, new prospects, warrant additional investment, additional time, more resources, more personalization, et cetera, et cetera.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. So if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like kind of phase one is to identify the best fit customers, accounts, whether net new, we haven't acquired them yet, or they're in our current customer base, and then using specific marketing strategies to then either land that specific account that we're going after or expand. Is it just marketing activities? I think that's also kind of maybe a misnomer, or maybe clarity. Let's talk about the marketing part of that, and what does that look like, and what could that mean for those two different scenarios?
Just one thing to add to what you were saying earlier about the first step is the account selection. The first step, actually, there's one before that, which would be to actually know what kind of accounts you should go after. So what's called your ideal customer profile, or your ICP. And many companies don't know what their ICP is. Many companies don't know what their ideal customer is. And you might ask the CEO, he or she will have one answer. You might ask the CFO, they'll have another answer. You ask the head of sales, they'll have another answer. So in most companies, or in a lot of companies rather, there isn't a joined up single answer to what the ICP, what the ideal customer is or should be of your business. So that's where we spend a lot of time with our clients, is helping them to get that right first, and making sure that everybody agrees, because otherwise you're going to have accounts coming into the business that somebody's going to say, or maybe accounts say that these guys are terrible customers, we should never have them, or sales or customer success say we should never have these customers because they're just too hard work, or the churn rate is too high, or it's too difficult, or there's some legal issues doing business with those companies in those countries. So you've got to really work hard to get your ICP documented and make sure everybody is in full agreement, and then you can use that ICP, look at your total addressable market, and then start to think about the account selection that comes afterwards. So for me, that's the foundation of your house. Otherwise, it will probably fall down at some point or get blown over. Or in the case of my little son downstairs, and the tale of the three little pigs, the house made of straw, the house made of sticks, and the house made of bricks. So you need to make sure that your house is made of bricks in case the big bad wolf comes along.
Thank you for clarifying, and I couldn't agree more. I see it every day, even in my day job at my current company. We're constantly evaluating what is our ICP, especially in this market. So I think that process is, you could spend, I don't think it's ever finished, number one, in my own personal experience, and can always be done on fine-tuning that. Very cool. Thanks for sharing. That's super helpful, and I completely agree. I think before you even get started, definitely figuring out who you're going after and why. Tell me about like ABM in 2023. How is it, I would say, kind of starting out, how is it changing? What are some things that folks should look for as we're in 2023? And I'll start there.
I think it's still in its infancy somewhat. Okay. And I think there's an awful lot of, I did a post the other day about, I called it, "What the hell is ABM?" And I wrote this kind of LinkedIn carousel that if you look on my profile, you'll see, which is all about the myths and misconceptions of ABM. And I think, I'm going to tell you a little 30-second potted history. ABM has been around now for 20 years. And it was invented by a lady called Bev Burgess, who had a dinner or lunch, I think probably a couple of glasses of wine involved, with some marketers from Accenture and Unisys. And they invented something that they called client-centric marketing, which was their way for those consultancy businesses, which is what they are, to be able to get into their customers, for their customers to buy their consultancy solutions, and for their customers to know all about them. Fast forward 20 years, she and people like her did a lot of documentation on the foundations and the frameworks, etc., and did a marvelous job. And then the technology companies came along, such as Terminus, Sixth Sense, Demandbase, and a whole plethora of more companies, and they have kind of almost hijacked ABM. And so most people think that technology is synonymous with ABM, and it's actually not. And I tell people, you don't need any technology to do ABM, which is really important to remember. What you need is a good pen, a good piece of paper, and a good brain, and you can do ABM without any technology. So I think that's important to say. So in terms of what does ABM look like in 2023, I think there is still probably a large part of the market is still very, very immature. And by that, and that's definitely, we're seeing that when we're talking to the market, we're talking to, potential customers, et cetera, et cetera. Many people are still trying to find out what it is, what does it do. Many people who tell us that they are doing ABM, when you scratch below the surface, they're doing either targeted demand generation or they're just doing targeted advertising. So I think it's important to recognize that there's still a level of immaturity in the market. So I think there's a lot of, that's why, my job, and people like you as well, Taylor, our job is to kind of help to shine a light on ABM, to tell people what good ABM looks like, and to give them help and advice and good content for them to access, and then that will help them to inform themselves, really. But I think what's coming down the pipe in 2023, well, we're now into February, so it's moving quickly already. But I think what we're seeing, obviously, is, and obviously there are three types of ABM. Obviously there's one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. One-to-many, obviously, is where the technology comes into play. You've got the more scale. You've got the uses of demand-based, Sixth Sense, Terminus, various platforms that can allow you to do ABM at scale. At the one-to-few, one-to-one, you're doing a bit more the white glove, more the executive level, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we're seeing definitely is a lot of more investment and interest in building stronger relationships. And I think now, particularly in the light of what's potential recession, or whether we're in a recession, we're starting a recession, wherever we are on that journey, you will keep customers if you look after them. You will win new customers if you show the difference that you are to everybody else. And I think most people in procurement most people who want to buy anything these days, particularly when it's a large ticket item, which is where ABM comes into play, they go to a lot of trouble to buy, so they don't want to change. So therefore, they want to build. They want to work with people like you, Taylor. They want to say, hey, this guy, his company, they seem to really want to. They seem to know us. They seem to have gone to the trouble. They seem to have tailored their offering to us. They stand out from everybody else. So therefore, that's what ABM can do very well, is that kind of personalization, that kind of getting under the skin of the customer, present customer or future customer, trying to help the customer to be the best that they can be. And I think that's where I love seeing great ABM stories, is when the customer is using ABM and they're becoming better. They're becoming better salespeople, better marketers, better customer success, better product developers, you name it. Because ABM can touch all parts of a business. It's not just about marketing. Going back to your earlier question, that's why the marketing is a little bit of a misnomer in the name account-based marketing. And in fact, Bev Burgess, who I mentioned earlier, who invented the term, I interviewed her on my podcast a few years ago, and even she said that maybe in hindsight she wouldn't have put marketing at the end because it's bigger. It's bigger than marketing, and also if you have something with marketing on it, it doesn't necessarily make it as inclusive as if you remove the word marketing. Otherwise, salespeople will say, "Oh God, not another marketing strategy," right?
No doubt. And as I'm thinking through this, and it may be that maybe we've just, as a culture, as a society, or whatnot, we haven't accepted the fact that we're all involved in different marketing activities. We're all representing the brand. And so maybe if customer success is, working with a customer, they're doing some sort of marketing, right? Just as the marketing team is. So I think maybe marketing just gets a bad rap. And so then everyone doesn't want to be labeled with that. So I digress. I'm curious. So you brought up a couple good points that I'd love to dive deeper into. First, number one, you kind of talked about how there's, so the mature, I kind of thinking of like the maturity model of ABM, right? And you mentioned a lot of organizations are kind of still in the infancy phase of ABM. How do you kind of differentiate? And actually, I think I even listened to a presentation you were on where they were discussing what's the difference between ABM and demand gen and other strategies, and how do we define it? So I was just curious, what are your thoughts on like what does really healthy ABM look like? And when you talked about that, the impact on sales, impact on marketing, impact on customer success, impact on revenue and retention and growth, what are some of those key things that make a mature ABM model?
Well, there's a lot of points to that, really, to be honest. What makes a healthy, mature model? Well, I think I'm just trying to think of some of the guests I've done on my podcast, Let's Talk ABM, just to name drop my podcast as well. But if you think about some of the guys I've spoken to from Autodesk, which is the kind of those multi-billion-dollar CAD company, or people from ServiceNow, or people from Google, or people from Microsoft, these types of companies have been running ABM for a number of years, probably in excess of 10 years. They've got large-ish teams which are dedicated to ABM. They've been able to build the kind of the argument for ABM within the organization. There is buy-in from the C-suite down. There is buy-in from the VP of sales and the whole sales community down. There is buy-in from the customer success team down. So they're able to actually, and there's obviously that time has allowed them to show the results, because I think one of the enemies of ABM, so to speak, to use a kind of a bellic term, one of the enemies of ABM is time, because you've been involved in different businesses, and so have I. And some bosses and some investors have got more time than others. ABM needs time. You don't just turn on a LinkedIn campaign and drop 100 target accounts and start firing some programmatic advertisements, and suddenly you've got a whole bunch of leads and everyone's getting very excited and the sales guys are making 100 phone calls or whatever. That's not what ABM is. That's just lead generation or inbound or certain parts of demand generation. ABM is an investment that depending on the prize that you're looking to capture, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year investments. And if you're I ask companies, what's your average order value? And some companies say, well, it's $50,000. Some companies say, well, it's $100,000. Some companies say it's $2 million. Some companies say it's $10 million. Depending on what you're selling. If you're working for Lockheed Martin and you're selling multi-billion-dollar fighter jets, you could use ABM as a strategy to win customers. And they're multi-billion-dollar, probably 15, 20-year projects. If you're selling, large, sophisticated solutions from Oracle into the Dow Jones top whatever, these are multi-million-pound deals, which then have rollover contracts. So nobody makes a decision about that overnight. And more often than not, the customers will have an incumbent supplier. So you've got to remove the incumbent supplier. You've got to get yourself in there, get yourself into all the decision makers, all the groups, all the buying committees, and that takes time. So I think the time thing is really key here. So that from a maturity point of view, one thing that we like to look at and see is the size of the marketing team, the type of marketers that they've got, where they are on that journey from, how good are they with their ICP? How good are they with their account selection? Have they developed a unique value proposition? Because you've got a value proposition, which is your business's value proposition, but have you got a value proposition for what you're trying to talk to the market about this particular service or this particular, how much work are you doing around insights? So for example, one thing that kind of makes ABM very different to other types of marketing strategies is the level of insight that you go into the customer, that you investigate the market, you investigate their business, you investigate the individuals within the business, and from all that information, it helps you and it informs your marketing campaign. And it also informs the doors that are going to be easier for you to open than other doors. So these are kind of like ticks that we look at to see whether or not on the level of maturity where they are. And in terms of, go back to what I mentioned before, campaign strategy, what are they doing? Are they building, account experiences? Are they building unique journeys for the customers? Or are they just pushing out a whole bunch of LinkedIn ads and are they sending Costa Coffee or Starbucks coffee vouchers or bottles of champagne or whatever? And it's that kind of whole joint. And then obviously then the big question we asked them is, well, how do you work with your sales colleagues? Are you working with your sales colleagues? Are they part of this program? Have you got an enablement program in place for your sales teams? Are you enabling sales to be better, or are you just pushing out your stuff, and sales are just doing their stuff, and never the twain shall meet? So ABM isn't ABM without sales, and that's a really key message for everyone to know. Is you've really got a lot of legwork to do with your sales colleagues. You've got a lot of buy-in. You've got a lot of influencing. You've got a lot of convincing. You've got to be quite humble. You've got to really kind of dig deep and build those relationships. Really,
that's helpful. Thanks, Declan. That's great. Yeah, you said a lot of things there that are piquing my interest, and I would probably spend another hour and a half talking through these different things. I think for the audience, though, just to clarify, it seems that from the maturity model, if you're looking at ABM, looking at what does success look like, historically, a lot of campaigns, you kind of mentioned it a couple different places of like kind of one-to-many campaigns where it's generic, you're marketing your entire ICP the same way, and you're selling the same way, and you're servicing the same way. ABM takes a more personalized, for lack of a better expression, and hyper-focused on like, hey, we're looking at this specific account. How can we personalize and how can we get into this account through marketing, through sales, through customer success, and through a collaborated, aligned way? And I think alignment was another thing too. Where ABM shines is that alignment across all the departments. And I appreciate how you mentioned too, as far as getting alignment at the very top, as executive level, or maybe even board level, all the way down. That way you can have that kind of entire go-to-market focus. And I feel like ABM's almost the forerunner of even like go-to-market, the term go-to-market, or they're almost similar ideas where the entire team is going to market together on these specific accounts. And they have that, and there's a lot of really creative and cool things you can do when the entire team is working together to figure out how to get into those accounts.
I think that's a fair point, Taylor. That I think the more mature ABM programs are more, as you said, more kind of aligned with GTM, go to market. And it's, for example, Sangram Vajri, who you may know, he was one of the co-founders of Terminus, and obviously now he's got a new venture, which is all around go to market. And he talks about that kind of more like you've just been talking about, the more kind of holistic, company-wide approach that you've got to work on operations. You've got to work on everything, because everything will move the dial. And if you think about most organizations, the sales and the marketing may do a fabulous job, but if the customer comes into the business and the business isn't fit for purpose, then that customer will churn very quickly, or indeed that customer, you won't get as much revenue from that customer as you would like, or that customer won't go around recommending you and advocating you to other people. And I was just thinking, a previous guest who's head of ABM at Autodesk, which is a really fascinating company. They've got this amazing store in San Francisco that you can go to. Their amazing computer-aided design stuff that they build for these amazing things. But they, a lot of their ABM is focused on the fact that two things. One, obviously, they're a very sophisticated company with so many different solutions that they've got to use ABM to kind of go into the company and say, hey, guys, you bought this, marvelous, but you need to think about this and this and this and this and this. So they need to step around the whole company so that the company can learn about the much, multi-billion-dollar company such as Autodesk has got many things that they can help you with. But also because they're a very large company, like most large companies, you're always acquiring, right? So if you're always acquiring, you're always bringing new solutions into your business. So if you're bringing new solutions into your business, you need to show those new solutions to your clients. So ABM is great to say, hey, you know us for this, but we also do this. And most companies will say, oh, I didn't know you do that. We're using another company, but we'd like to use you. So that's why it goes. ABM is it's a lot of people think about it as like new client acquisition, but it's far. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the origins are in existing customers, and the best case studies I've seen of ABM are one-to-one ABM, deep personalization into existing customers, because you think about keeping is the new winning, right? So in recession times, you normally try to keep as many customers as possible, and then try to bring on new business. But your focus should be on keeping your customers. And ABM is a fantastic tool for that.
I love it. Declan, super great. And I think ending on that is a perfect way to end, because I think my next question was, how do folks get started? And I think you said it. You start with your current customer base. How do you retain and expand using ABM? Super cool. Declan, thanks so much for coming on. Tell me, how can folks get a hold of you? How can they follow you in the interwebs?
Well, I mean, LinkedIn is probably where I hang out the most. A bit too much, probably. I think there's two. I think there's two Declan Mulkeens in the world. There's me, and there's a doctor. So I'm not the doctor. So you can find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Declan, thanks so much. You're a great follow. I've learned a lot from you on ABM and your podcast and Strategic ABM. So thanks so much for coming on, and see you around.
Thank you, Taylor. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.